Hi, Farm Wife. Hi, Aurora. Hi, Nicole. Good. I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad. Let's get the phone ready. Hi, Nana Patty. My holder. It works, so, you know. Hi, Fazia Wanwu. Hi, Tiny Titan. We'll go where we left off last time. Oops, that's the wrong book. Yeah, don't want to read that one. Hi, Moo. Hi, Denise. Hi, anybody watching in the replay. Thank you so much. Hope you don't get too scared. Remember, nothing to be afraid of. Come on in. Come in. Come in a little bit closer. Let me see you. Okay, I see you. Sit back, relax. Do whatever you want. No judgment here. Just gonna get freaked out. Hi, Larky. This is chapter 11. Try the Gingerbread is the name of it. I like that title. We arrived in Gettysburg just before dinner and unpacked our bags in the 2-bedroom suite at our hotel. Karen, my sister, was scheduled to do a history tour with her college class, and I was along for the ride because I was a folklorist by trade and had never before visited the battlefield. I had a good reason for this omission. Both my sister and I had a sixth sense, passed down through many generations in our physically gifted Pennsylvania Dutch family. Whenever my sister and I traveled together, physically, no, PSY, CHI, physically, or psychically, I guess. Yeah, it'd be psychic. Yeah, sorry, guys. Let me start that over. Both my sister and I had a sixth sense, passed down through many generations in our psychically gifted Pennsylvania Dutch family. Whenever my sister and I traveled together, strange things happened, and that was when we visited normal places that weren't particularly haunted. Who knew what would happen when we visit a spook-strewn place like Gettysburg? There was an air of tension in our suite as we debated where to go for dinner. In coming to Gettysburg, we had purposely entered one of the most haunted spots in the United States. Most folks visiting Gettysburg wondered if they were going to experience something supernatural during their visit. I just wondered when the spooky events would start. As it turned out, the answer was right away. We decided to visit the famous Dobbin House restaurant for dinner. Located in downtown Gettysburg, the Dobbin House is a colonial restaurant with candlelit elegance, superior food, and gracious service that accurately reproduces the sights, sounds, and tastes of previous centuries. It is the oldest building in Gettysburg, located right across the street from the spot where Abraham Lincoln presented the Gettysburg Address. I would like to go to that restaurant. Hi, Meg. Nice to see ya. The historic house was a stopping point for slaves traveling the Underground Railroad. The slaves were concealed in secret hiding places located under the floors and in the walls. According to reviews we'd read about the restaurant, those hiding places could still be seen by ghosts. I parked the car in the front parking lot, and we headed toward the restaurant entrance. Karen eyed the old house speculatively, already wondering if the alleged hauntings were accurate or only imagined. As soon as we stepped inside, we knew that the reports were spot on. I felt a familiar chill across my skin, and I saw Karen blink rapidly as her extra sense came to life. I was rather envious of my sister's gift. She could look at a place and see it exactly as it appeared in the past. My own gift took the form of clairvoyance, the ability, clairaudience, the ability to hear ghosts speaking. Oh. The colonial garbed server suggested that we eat downstairs in the Springhouse Tavern, and we happily agreed. I fell in love with the tavern on my own way down the period staircase with its worn boards, which groaned theatrically when we stepped on them. It was like walking into the past. My modern garb was out of place here. The dark, heavy beams on the ceiling, the stone walls, the brick floor, and the magnificent fireplaces were from another time altogether. The long wooden bar begged you to have a seat and take a drink while you waited for a table. It was one of the few times I hoped our table wouldn't be ready immediately, just so I could take in the atmosphere. Karen hopped on a stool and ordered drinks for us. Meanwhile, I looked at the old spring and the dripping candles, stretching my sixth sense to the limit to see who was here. I took a quick walk around the room before joining my sister at the bar. Chilly air swirled softly around my body, and I walked in and out of cold spots. Oh, yes, this place was very haunted. According to the rumors, the ghost of escaped slaves haunted the building, particularly this downstairs tavern. But the person I was sensing had never been a slave. He was someone else. I wondered just who he was. One thing was obvious. He was as curious about my sister and me as we were about him. The hostess called us to our table before we finished our drinks. So we carried them with us to the far end of the room and slid into a booth. The candle on the table flickered merrily in the rush of moving air as we sat down and then burned straight and tall once we settled in the booth. I eyed the shelf edging the wall beside us with interest. It was full of old-fashioned jugs, lamps, and other period items that added to the colonial ambience around us. Then I grabbed a menu and read hungrily through the options. As Karen and I debated the merits of various items, a cold spot descended upon our booth and settled on the shelf beside us. Abruptly, the candle streamed sideways as an ethereal breeze billowed from the shelf. My sister blinked in surprise and glanced at me over the top of her menu. I pinched my mouth in agreement and glanced at the candle. She nodded and returned to her perusal of the tavern specials as our server bustled up in her long skirt and white cap. "And what will you ladies have?" she asked jovially. What did I do? I think I skipped. Okay, there we go. We ordered hot sandwiches and then sipped our drinks, and we chatted about our upcoming tour. Occasionally, one of us made oblique references to the third person at our table, but our server was bustling in and out with bread and drinks, and we couldn't speak freely with her present. The candle was rapidly developing a drip due to the steady, cool breeze coming from our companion. High doors of perception. Oh, ooh, did you hear that? The candle dripping fast because of the third, well, their companion, the ghost. "Who do you suppose?" my sister said as she took a piece of bread and passed the butter. "I don't know," I replied. "Maybe the historical section on the menu will tell us something." We munched bread and sipped wine as we read up on the history of the tavern. A paragraph in, we both spoke simultaneously. "Alexander Dobbin!" And that's when my supernatural gift kicked in. "That's right," said Alexander Dobbin, for my ears only, from his perch between us. My sister caught the look on my face and raised her eyebrows at me, but our server was back with our meals, so she dropped the matter in favor of food. Our talk turned to the history tour, and Karen told me about her teacher and the classmates I would be meeting tomorrow. About halfway through our meal, the cold spot vanished, and the candle flame burned upright without a flicker. "He's gone," I told Karen. She grinned and pointed over my shoulder. I turned and saw a crowded fireplace table with a wildly flickering candle. "He hasn't gone too far," she replied. While we studied the dessert menu, the cold spot returned. This time, it settled on the seat beside me, between me and the wall shelf, causing the candle to flicker so wildly I thought it would go out. I shivered, wishing I'd brought my jacket. Karen's eyebrows rose to her hairline as her sixth sense took in our returned companion. Here's the illustration. Try the gingerbread. "Welcome back," I said politely to Dobbin, and then turned my attention back to my sister. "So, Karen, what are you going to have for dessert?" "I am going to have the chocolate brownie," she said. "Try the gingerbread." the ghost of Alexander Dobbin said with authority. I blinked in astonishment. The gingerbread? I asked aloud. Why should I try the gingerbread? Because it's very good here, Dobbin said. You will like it. Karen was staring at me in glassy-eyed astonishment. I beg your pardon, she said, although she knew exactly to whom I spoke. Someone, I emphasized the word, is recommending the gingerbread. Seriously? My sister asked. I grimaced wryly at her. Yes, seriously. She knew very well that my gift was clairaudience. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. The server bustled up, all smiles, and asked for our dessert order. I'll have the fudge brownie with ice cream and chocolate sauce, my sister said. Hi, Steph. I hear your gingerbread is very good, I said with a glance toward the flickering candle. I'd like to try it. You won't be sorry, Dobbin said, his words landing in my inner ear at the same time my brain registered the server's reply. Hush, I can't hear. I spoke silently to the ghost beside me. I felt him grin. The gingerbread arrived. As predicted, it was very good, and it went very well with the colonial atmosphere of the tavern. I still like chocolate better, I grumbled to the ghost after sampling a bite of my sister's dessert. Karen and Dobbin both grinned. Our bill came, and with it, the end of our visit to the Springhouse Tavern of Dobbin House. We have to leave now, I murmured to Dobbin as Karen handed our payment to the server. I know. Thank you for coming. Fare you well, Alexander Dobbin replied. The cold spot vanished from the table, and the candle flame stood straight and tall once again. A few tables away, the candles started flickering wildly as a cold breeze blew over them. Karen glanced at me, at our empty booth, and then at the neighboring tables. She rose with a smile. Come on, let's go, she said, and headed toward the staircase. Let me get a little bit of a sip. Hello, my little ones. Come closer. Let Granny see you. Let me pinch that little cheek. Because I'm good like that, Steph. Don't ask. I have powers. That's all I can read in the dark. Hi, Denise Cormier. I'm not sure if I said hello. Goodbye, I called silently. Then I followed her up the stairs. We exited into the darkness of a Gettysburg night to stroll around the various shops and get acquainted with the town. As we walked, I felt the air around me fill with a silent electric charge as the spirits of Gettysburg awoke all along the main roads. It felt like the coming of a thunderstorm, a powerful concatenation of raw energies that might break over our heads at any time. Oh, Steph, you know how I can read in the dark? because I recorded this today. This is a recorded video from today. That's why. Now figure that one out. As my sister chatted with a costume guide waiting to give a ghost tour, I heard the statico rat-a-tat of a drumbeat coming up the street. When we strolled onward toward the residential section a few blocks away, I walked headfirst into a cold wall of malevolent energy coming from a house on one corner. I whirled crisply like a soldier on parade and walked back the way I came. Karen, a bold soul, asked me to wait while she crossed the street to investigate further. She barely got both feet planted on the far sidewalk when she hit the same invisible wall. She wheeled, bolted back across. Well, it's true, Steph. It's the new thing. Haven't you seen it on YouTube yet? Yes. I can react. This was recorded during the day, and I can set it to look like how I want. And it will actually speak to the chat. I say it because, this is recorded. So I'm kind of like an it right now. It's really cool. Very, very technical. Very. Okay. She bolted back across the street and passed me at a swift trot. I joined her, hardly able to keep up. Neither of us felt like dealing with whatever lived in that house. Not on our first night in town. I hadn't minded the ghost in the tavern. Old-fashioned, gruff gentleman that he was, but this overwhelming feeling of supernatural activity was too much on top of today's long drive, and we still hadn't made it to the battlefield. Enough was enough. I turned to Karen and said, I really can't deal with this now. Not after the long drive. I need to go back to the hotel and prepare myself for our visit to the battlefield tomorrow. She took one look at my white face and agreed. When I got back to my room, I firmly closed the curtains against the whistling soldiers marching past in the darkness and ignored the spirit that knocked for admittance on my wall. So this is Gettysburg, I mused as I got ready for bed, and we haven't even made it to the battlefield yet. I wonder what we will see tomorrow. Shaking my head in bemusement, I turned off the light and went to sleep. Hi, Nightmare. Well, that's weird. It just ended. That was it. Chapter 12, The Noose. Salisbury was an overbearing man with a Puritan streak that did not allow room for laughing or dancing or leisure activities. As a prosperous landowner, he had many slaves and indentured servants working on his 1,000-acre estate, and they were required to heed their master's every whim with instant obedience or risk severe discipline. It was a hard life. It was certainly not the life Anna had envisioned when she signed her indentured papers in exchange for passage to America. The fun-loving girl grew up as a pampered only daughter in a village full of singing and laughter and parties. When a carriage accident killed both her parents, the orphaned Anna dreamed of a fine life in America and eagerly embarked on a trip to the New World. The stark reality of her new situation came as a shock to the merry girl. Life on the Salisbury estate was nothing but hard work and strict adherence to the master's laws. Her pretty dresses were replaced with sober clothing that adhered to the conventions of an indentured servant. She was reprimanded for laughing, for lingering in the kitchen to talk to the other servants, for singing while she worked, and for showing the master's children the latest dance steps. The only pleasure Anna found in her new American life was in the company of the little farm dog who adopted her shortly after she arrived, and in her twice-a-day walks to the pasture to bring the cows in for milking. Anna loved the farm animals as passionately as she hated every other aspect of her American life. Oh, this doesn't sound like it's going to go too good. But you never know. She named the little dog Rex, and likewise assigned each milk cow a name based on its quirks and silly little habits. The cows came to the fence to greet Anna each morning and evening, as eager to see the merry girl as she was to see them. She sang to them in her mother tongue and would dance in the fields with her little dog. It was a small pleasure in her otherwise dull, work-oriented life. About 6 months after Anna arrived in America, a new family moved into town. Let me get another drink. Uh-oh, who left? You're not allowed to leave. I made Lexi laugh. She said she started laughing when she heard that. Get back here. Whoever you are, come back. Come see Granny. About 6 months after Anna arrived in America, a new family moved into town. To Anna's delight, they came from the same part of Germany where she'd lived with her parents until the carriage accident. The Schumann family was every bit as warm-hearted and merry and lively as Anna's parents had been, indeed as every other family in her once scorned, and now dearly missed hometown had been. Anna snuck off to the Schumann home every chance she got. They always had guests over for dinner and dancing, and the young girl spent many evenings in this merry fashion after the other indentured servants had gone to bed. Another one left. Shame, shame. I'll remember that. All too soon, the other servants found out about Anna's innocent peccadillos and reported her crimes to the overseer. Anna was summoned to the harsh presence of the master, and the Schumann family was forbidden to her. Oh, I'm sorry, Steph. Oh, I'm glad this can help. I know it's super hard. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Sorry. As punishment, she was set to the hardest, dirtiest task on the estate under the strict supervision of a dour old maidservant who beat her whenever she paused for breath. Her little dog was taken away. and she was no longer allowed to fetch the cows for the morning and evening milking. Anna was miserable from sunup to sundown. That's awful. Poor girl. Had to take away these simple things that she loved. It seemed the last straw to the poor, overworked young girl when she heard that the entire village had been invited to a dance at the Schumann home and she would not be allowed to attend. Feeling angry and rebellious, Anna waited until the dire old maidservant fell asleep by the kitchen fire and snuck away to the party. The Schumanns welcomed her with glee, and soon she was dancing with the handsomest boy in the village. The farmhouse was filled. Oh, wait. Yeah, the Schumanns welcomed her with glee, and soon she was dancing with the handsomest boy in the village. The farmhouse was filled with laughter and drinking and song, and Anna was the merriest of them all. Anna was chuckling winsomely over something her new beau murmured into her ear when silence crept over the room like the coming of winter. Anna looked up and found herself staring into the eyes of Salisbury, the master of the estate, looming in the doorway of the farmhouse. The whole company, even the handsome young beau, backed away from the fury in his eyes, leaving Anna alone to face her master's wrath. He struck Anna's face twice with his riding whip, sending the stricken girl to her knees. Then he tied a length of rope around Anna's waist, as if she were a rebellious beast, and led her like a mule across the full length of the room, humiliating her in front of the gathered assembly. Anna's cheeks were scarlet with embarrassment as Salisbury jerked her through the front door and secured the rope to his horse's girth. It was only when Salisbury swung himself up in the saddle that Anna realized she would have to run behind the horse all the way back to the estate. Aghast, guests watched silently from the doorway and yard as Salisbury spurred his horse to a trot, and Anna perforce trotted with it, stumbling and sobbing in terror and humiliation. She would never dare show her face in town again. Thank you, guys. That's really sweet. The master could not have contrived a crueler punishment than this. After running 2 miles down the moonlit road, Anna was gasping for breath, tears pouring down her face. She begged the master to slow down. Instead, he spurred the horses to a greater speed. Exhausted, Anna tripped and fell on her face in the muddy lane. The sudden tug on the girth frightened the horse. It reared with an anxious neigh and then bolted, throwing the master in the ditch and dragging the helpless Anna along behind. Oh, her body bouncing on every rock and log and fence post on either side of the long lane. By the time Salisbury caught up with the fleeing horse, Anna was very gruesomely dead, her head held on by a single thread of skin, and her face and body so torn up she was barely recognizable. Let me get a sip. Salisbury was tried and convicted for the murder of the indentured Anna, but he was able to convince judge and jury that he had not intended the accident to happen, and so the judge decreed that Salisbury would not hang for his crime until he reached 99 years of age. Not wishing to appear too lenient, the judge also ruled that Salisbury must wear a rope noose around his neck at all times. The noose served as a continuous reminder of the estate owner's cruel deed, both to himself and others. The rough rope noose contrasted starkly with Salisbury's fancy clothes and elegant manners. It instantly drew the eye. The servants and merchants who dealt with Salisbury every day found themselves speaking to the noose rather than to the man. Bless you. People, even those who still did business with the convicted murderer, avoided Salisbury. The cruel master grew angrier and more forbidding with each passing day. And then Anna returned. The first to see her were the milk cows she loved so dearly. They stampeded suddenly across the pasture one evening, crowding along the fence to peer at a white figure tied to a phantom horse that stumbled down the twilight lane. The cows mooed to their much missed friend, but Anna's ghost raced away into the darkness without acknowledging her animal companions. The servant sent to bring the cows to the barn for milking ran away as frantically as Anna's ghost, terrified of what he had seen. The little dog was the next to see Anna. Oh. It ran to meet an invisible presence at the gate and followed the non-person all over the farm. The servants felt an ominous cold breeze whenever the dog drew near, and they cowered away as the ghost of Anna hurried past. Salisbury himself came face to face with the dog just before supper. The master gasped and backed away suddenly, staring into the... Morning, Leslie. Sorry, guys. Staring into the empty air with his hands raised in defense. The overseer who attended his master saw nothing, but Salisbury cringed in terror, crying, "No, Anna. No." The noose around Salisbury's neck rose until the end was several feet above his head, and Salisbury was dangling beneath it. The overseer grabbed his master's legs and held him up so he wouldn't choke to death. All at once, the rope was released with a malevolent chuckle, and Salisbury and his overseer plunged to the ground. They lay panting with fear as the little dog barked merrily and circled them with its tail wagging. Shortly after this incident, the Schumann family sold their farm and moved away. Frightened by the apparition of a tied woman racing desperately across their yard and down the lane each night, no one in town would use the lane after dark for fear of encountering the ghost. Community opinion was so strongly against the master of the estate that Salisbury found it increasingly hard to do business in any of the surrounding towns. Angry citizens even spoke of tarring and feathering the master of the haunted estate and driving him out of the colony. Desperate to foster some goodwill in the town, Salisbury threw a splendid dinner party for all the wealthy landowners in the region. Everyone who was anyone was invited, and most of those invited came to the party more out of curiosity than any feelings of goodwill toward their host. Salisbury stood in the main hall, greeting his guest, dressed in his fine evening clothes, with the noose tied loosely around his neck, as if it were a cravat. The guests were embarrassed by the noose, and most averted their eyes when speaking to Salisbury. The party was a flop from the first moment. No one laughed or joked over drinks, and the small talk during the awkward dinner was trivial indeed. More than one landowner gazed longingly out the windows and doorways, wishing the deadly dull evening would soon be over. Boy, he ruined it for everybody, didn't he? By a heart made wise. 42 minutes. While desserts were served to the dinner guest, a huge gust of wind hit the mansion, shaking it from roof to wine cellar. A terrific banging sounded from the front hallway as the double doorways of the stone mansion were torn from their hinges. The guests sprang to their feet as dead leaves and the stale smell of the grave swirled around the dining room. A great column of white light appeared in the doorway. Men in fancy suits scrambled away, and their jeweled ladies screamed and fainted as the light made its way through the center of the table, cutting along the length of the heavy oak furnishings like some massive white saw. The light stopped in front of Salisbury and grew larger, one end thrusting through the floorboards under the large table, and the other end touching the ceiling. The table creaked as if under enormous pressure, and then split in half. It fell to either side of the shocked master with a crash of cutlery and silver plating, injuring those guests who had remained seated during the disturbance, and splattering food and drink over the wiser guest who had fled to either side of the room. Here's the noose. Don't look too close. Snuggles under blankets. Suddenly, the noose tightened around Salisbury's neck, and he was yanked out of his chair, napkin still tucked into his collar. Salisbury was dragged in the most humiliating fashion across the room by the loose end of the noose. Before his terrified guests could blink, Salisbury was out the front door and running down the lane, each stride longer and more frantic than the last as the noose pulled tighter. Servants and guests raced out onto the moonlit lawn and saw a glowing phantom horse jogging down the lane with the master of Salisbury estate pulled along behind it with the master. A translucent figure in a white dress sat in the saddle and urged the horse to go faster, faster with her spurs. The bravest of the servants tried to follow their master, but slammed right into an invisible wall that was as cold as ice and swirling with malignant fury. No one could pass through it. No one dared try. It was the same moment, in the same moment that the glowing figures vanished into the distance, the invisible wall collapsed with a swooshing sound, blowing dust and debris into the faces of the hovering guests. The bravest and most curious of the men followed the servants down the lane in search of the master. They found Salisbury's body 2 miles up the road, hanging by the neck from a tall oak tree. A small dog sat by his dangling feet, wagging its tail. The end. Let's see. Okay, I'll read one more, okay? Denise. Part 2, Powers of Darkness and Light. This one's called Ring Around the Rosie. Oh no, Steph. Dang it, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Chapter 13, Ring Around the Rosie. Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies. I hear the voices chanting in the woods, and I look up from my lonely sandbox, enchanted by the sound. There are little girls and boys playing games in the forest behind my house. Someone to play with at last. Hi, Coldy Case. When we lived in an apartment in the city, there were lots of children that I could play with. But now we live in a brand new house outside the city, and there are only grown-up neighbors on our block. There was no one to play with in my new home. I feel lonely all the time. So the sound of singing, laughing children is very welcome to me. I jump up and race into the woods shouting, "Hello, hello." I do remember ring around the collar, ring around the collar. I jump up and race into the woods shouting, "Hello, hello," but no one answers me. I hear the other children giggling just over the ridge and run up the hill as fast as I can. I get to the top in record time, but no one is there. Around me, the woods feel empty. I turn around, kicking dispiritedly at the autumn leaves underfoot, and wander down the hill to my backyard and the sad little toys in my lonely sandbox. While I eat dinner with Mama and Papa, I hear the children singing from the woods behind my house. Ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. There is a dramatic thudding sound as several bodies tumble to the ground and then giggles. I drop my chicken leg onto my plate and run to the window to look outside. All I see are trees, no children. Come back to the table, Sarah, and finish your dinner, Mama scolds. But I want to play with the children in the woods, I protest. What children in the woods? Papa asks with interest. The ones who were singing just now, I say as I climb back into my chair, which is nearly too tall for me, and pick up my fried chicken with greasy fingers. No one was singing just now, Papa says, piling mashed potatoes onto his plate. What an imagination the child has, he adds, grinning at Mama before putting a big spoonful of potatoes on my plate. It is too dark to play outside when we finish supper, so I must wait until morning to look for the singing children. I roam alone in the woods the next morning, listening for the sound of laughing voices. A new family must have moved into our neighborhood, I decide. A big family with many children. Their children are very shy. I hear them giggle and whisper words that I cannot make out. I run toward the sound, but they're too quick for me. It's like a game of hide and seek. Ollie, ollie, oxen free, I shout, jumping out from behind a big tree, but no one is there. I hear the children laughing at me from the far side of the ridge, where the ground drops suddenly into a steep ravine. I'm not allowed to play up there. Papa says it's too dangerous. Bless you. I cannot follow the children up that hill. I cannot break my promise to Papa. Sadly, I trudge away, going back to my lonely yard to play on the tire swing Papa tied to a tall tree. That reflection makes it kind of hard to see, doesn't it? At lunch, I tell my mother about the game of hide and seek that the children are playing with me, but I know she doesn't believe me. She ruffles my hair and chuckles about my bright imagination. I find it odd that she cannot hear the children. They sing so loud. Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies. I ask Papa about the children when he gets home from work. He can't hear them either. He calls them my imaginary friends and says I will grow up to be a writer. In the morning, I wake to the sound of children's voices calling to me through the window. Little girl, come and play. Little girl, come and play. They sing over and over in my ears. The children sound like so much fun that I run outside as fast as I can to try to catch them. I plunge into the woods, calling back to the children, but no one answers. So I stand still as a mouse, trying to hear where they're hiding. Then I hear Mama calling from the house. Sarah, time for breakfast. As I hurry home, I hear giggles and the children start to sing. Ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies. Oh, why are they so shy? It starts to rain after breakfast, so I stay inside, putting a puzzle together in the living room while Mama has coffee with a neighbor lady. I wouldn't live here for any amount of money, the neighbor lady says to Mama. The woods behind the house are haunted. Haunted, Mama says, in the bright tone she uses when she doesn't believe what someone is saying. Yes, haunted, the neighbor lady confirms. Back in colonial times, a local family was fleeing from the British when a revolutionary battlefield swung too close to their farm. Bullets flew everywhere, and cannons exploded all around. The father was wounded by a bullet, and the mother told her 3 children to flee into the woods, while she followed with their injured father. The terrified children could barely see for all the smoke from the nearby cannons. They fled to the top of the ridge, and the youngest slipped and fell into the ravine. The middle child stumbled and rolled after him, but the hem of her skirt was caught by her elder brother at the very edge of the ravine. Then the cloth ripped, and the little girl tumbled to her death in the stream far below. Her elder brother, making a last desperate grab for his sister, fell too and smashed onto the rocks between his 2 dead siblings. Yes, you can, Doors of Perception. It should still be in your email box. My address in your Gmail, should still be there. It's just 2scooterchick at gmail.com. Okay, yes, I'll show them. Yes, I will. Thank you. Um, yeah, her elder brother, making a last desperate grab for his sister, fell too and smashed onto the rocks between his two dead siblings. People say that the children's ghosts still roam the forest behind this house. They are lonely and often call to living children, asking them to come play with them. But this is a death summons. Any child who answers their call is doomed to die in the ravine as they did, for living children cannot play with ghosts. Hush, Mamma says fiercely, looking around to see if I'd overheard this gruesome tale. You'll scare my daughter. Good, the neighbor lady replies, unrepentantly. Maybe she'll stay out of the woods. They're not safe for a young child. You're talking complete nonsense, Mamma says sharply. Let's speak about something else. And she asks my neighbor if anyone in the area plays bridge. I think about the neighbor's story while I finish my puzzle. She means well, but she obviously doesn't know what she's talking about, I decide. The children in the woods are real people. They laugh and sing and dance. Ghosts don't laugh and sing. Ghosts are scary creatures. They would never play Ring Around the Rosie. While I am eating my breakfast the next morning, I hear the children call to me from the woods. Sarah, come out and play, they cry. Sarah, come out and play with us. They know my name. Now that we're introduced, they will have to let me play with them. I finish my breakfast so fast that the milk spills from my cereal bowl. Then I run outside with my blue smock still dripping wet. Who are you? I call as I run into the woods. I hear them giggling. Their footsteps scamper first here, then there. I laugh aloud and follow them uphill and down. They are always just out of sight. Then they start singing somewhere near the top of the forbidden ridge. Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. I race up the hill and careen down the far side. At last I see them. The children are right in front of me, dancing in a circle on the edge of the ridge. Their clothing looks a bit strange, and their bodies flicker around the edges, but I am too busy running to notice. Then my foot slips in the loose dirt, and I slide down the hill on my bottom. I am going very fast, too fast. The ravine is directly in front of me, and I can see black cliffs with jagged outcroppings like sharp teeth. If I tumble over the edge, there's a steep drop of 100 feet onto hard, sharp rocks in the water of the stream far below. I scream and call to the children for help. They're still dancing in a circle, singing, Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. I don't think they can hear me. I'm sliding faster and faster down the slope, banging painfully against rocks and vainly trying to grab roots, anything to stop my fall. My heart pounds with fear, and I'm sweating and cold by turns. Help me! I scream as my body pitches off the edge of the cliff. For a moment, I hang in the air above the ravine like a floating feather. Ice cold bands close around my chest as I realize that the children are dancing in a circle in midair, far above the rocky floor of the ravine. As I plummet through the middle of their game, their ice cold bodies chill my skin. I scream and fall for a long, long time, for the rest of my too short life. Above me, the children's voices are still singing, Ring around the Rosie. That's sad, isn't it? Ooh. The next one's going to be 9/11. I'm going to save that for next time. That is sad, isn't it? This one's the 9/11 one is going to give me creeps, I think. Because it starts out with it's their 20th anniversary and they decide to take a sunset cruise around lower Manhattan the Sunday before Labor Day. They're doing the touristy thing in the Big Apple. That is creepy, right? Hi, little lady. You're not too scared, are you? I see you're screaming. And it is sad. I'm going to save our spot. The ring around the Rosie creeps you out. Well, I hope you guys got a little bit of a creep. I know I did. Some of these stories are good. Some are boring, but some are good, surprisingly. Okay, guys. See ya later. Good night, guys. Good day, good afternoon, wherever you are. Bye. Granny says,